So now we are adding information to the database to allow it to be analyzed, and we do so very easily by going to the Input Data User Form sheet, and this will present us with three buttons that the user can click on based on their desires, and this will allow them to add information to the respective sheets to allow for efficient analysis. So let's look at the Update Company Funding sheet. So you click here, and this user form will pop up, and you'll be able to fill in the information based on the information you currently have. All the fields that are red are required, and therefore you must enter them for it to actually add the information into the sheet. So let's do a brief example here and see how this works. So this will actually automatically update everything into the database and allow you to immediately analyze the information that you just put in. So now we enter a deal amount, and then once we click Update Funding Information, it'll say Information Added, press X to close, or enter more information. Now let's say we didn't input a required field, and we click the green button, it'll say no primary college entered, and therefore you would have to enter the primary college before this information is added. So now let's go to the bottom of this sheet, and you can see right here, it was added right in here, and now you'll be able to continue to input more information about that specific funding. You can do so without actually exiting out of the user form. And here's just a quick look of the other user forms. You have adding a new investor. It has your investor ID, and that will actually tie to the PitchBook data separated sheet here. And this is useful for if you have a new investor and you would like to try and find a company to match for this investor, you can add it there. Now looking at adding a company, this has a lot more information because a lot more information is required about the specific company, and fill out all these information fields, and it will add it to the company data master sheet here, and it will also allow companies that you enter here to be analyzed in the other green sheets, like investments by college, funding, and match sheet. And this company will be eligible now to be matched with investors.
Pairing companies to investors became challenging when the data was presented in a tabular format. To ease this process, we've created a dashboard which will help better visualize the locations of companies and investors and filter their respective information based on desired locations. On the left, we have a map in blue of the startup company locations within OIF's database. Adjacent to the map is its slicer, which will filter the company information presented in the table below. On the right, we have a map in red of the investor locations within OIF's database. Adjacent to the map, we have a slicer which will filter the investor information presented in the table below. Information used to create both maps is stored to the right of the sheet for easy access. When a user is to hover over a location on the map, they can see how many companies or investors are within that area. To visualize this even better, two green buttons have been created here, where when the top one is pressed, it will input the count of companies and investors to each state. And to revert back to the original format, the bottom button can be pressed. To demonstrate, if a company based in Ohio were looking for nearby investors, they can filter the map using the investor slicer with nearby states, say Kentucky. By doing so, the investor information in the table will also be filtered, giving the investor name, last investment date, and total available dry powder. For investors looking for companies in Ohio, they can use the blue slicer to filter out the company information table below, giving the company name, primary affiliated college, industry, as well as total funding raised.
The final piece of the project is the funding and match sheet. On this sheet, we begin at the top, where the user is intended to click on the green Click to Match Company with Investor button. After clicking on the button, a user form should appear, which asks for the user to either search or select a company. From here, the user can type in a company into the search bar until it appears, or they can use the scroll bar and try to find their company that way. After selecting a company, the user should hit the Find Best Investor Options button below. Once that button is hit, VBA Code creates weighted averages for each investor based on their values for preferred state, preferred industry, status, and amount desired compared to the values of the company within those same categories. It then outputs 5 investors to the table directly to the right of the button, which resemble the 5 highest weighted averages or the 5 best investment options for the company selected by the user. Moving on in the sheet, below the macro, we have a couple of pivot tables with company and investor data. These tables are intended to allow the user to see both the total funding raised by each company and the total dry powder for each investor. The user can then drill down on any company or investor based on the filters available here, like primary college, licensed fiscal year, and industry for company, or headquarters location, preferred industry, and investor status for investors. For example, they can look at what companies specialize in energy and environment industry, and then they can look at which investors prefer to invest in the energy industry. So instead of focusing on one company through the use of the match button like at the top of the sheet, users can analyze a bigger picture of what companies or investors fall under which specific categories.